Ex-convicts of Reddit. What is your most pleasant prison memory? There's a feeling of freedom even being locked up. Freedom from responsibilities. No rent, free food, routine. I needed that at one point in my life. I wouldn't want to go back to that, but at the time it was probably the better of a few scenarios. There was one day in my unit the kitchen workers organized an event where they stole so much food out of the kitchen they fed the entire 250-ish man pod and all the races ate nachos together. I wasn't your usual inmate. I was in for a truck accident where someone died. First ever offense. No violence. Didn't take drugs. Very rarely even drank alcohol. Never committed a crime in my life. So I was a polar opposite to pretty much everyone in there. It was a low-security prison farm, and one day I decided to walk along the boundary fence to the library. Going on the wrong side of the fence technically meant that you escaped, so it was watched. As I'm casually wandering along, two guards drove up and told me to get into the car. They took me for a strip search, and demanded to know why I was on the other side of the fence. I wasn't. I asked them if they had cameras, and they said yes. So I told them to double-check the footage because I'm not a fuckwit trying to escape. They checked, and let me go. Everyone in the prison wanted details on what happened. I was a minor celebrity for the afternoon, and I had a bit of respect amongst the other inmates, because even someone as straight as me copped shit from the screws. I did some time in Hump Weatherby back in the 90s. Some of us went on a work party to clean up litter at Raft Church Fenton after an air show. When we were walking around the airfield we were joined by some of the pilots. We watched one of them take off later on and realized they were red arrows. St. Paddy's Day one year. The guards were in a super good mood and let us get extra food and dessert. This was my best memory because usually the guards were super cold and aggressive but for some reason they were really chill that day. Playing Monopoly and finding out that the get out of jail free cards had been removed. I wasn't in prison so it doesn't technically apply when I was serving time for drug charges. Saturdays my tank would have later bedtimes, so we would usually pitch in some of our commissary to make a spread pizza and share it like a community LMAO. This kid in my pod was being transferred to another prison located clear across the state. He had no clue why they were moving him. He started crying uncontrollably, which you would think is the last thing you'd want to do in jail, prison. All of the inmates in my pod immediately went to console him. He was hugged and made to feel as comfortable as possible. Another time I was arrested the day after my daughter had painted my toenails rainbow colors. I was in a holding cell with 25 other guys. They had all been looking, but finally one guy asked me if I had a daughter. I explained to him that she had in fact colored my nails. Then, all of the inmates started talking about their kids, specifically daughters. It was a fantastic experience for jail. Grown men crying because they fucked up and couldn't see their kids. Fuck the criminal justice system. 1 in approximately 140 Americans are imprisoned. That's insane. The vast majority of incarcerated people don't belong in there at all. It's crazy. The system needs to be completely overhauled. I had just got busted in Ireland and being English and in Limerick, Stab City, I was a little concerned. Turns out no one gave a shit where I was from as long as I was upbeat. The bloke in my cell pulled out a half-ounce bag of weed from his ass and we got totally fucking stoned. It was a mixed prison and from about 8 p.m. people were shouting to and fro. Then a chap was shouting his undying love for Mary. A guitar started playing and he sung, Nikita, the Elton John song to her. It was utterly silent as the whole prison listened. I had to hold my chest as I thought my heart was literally going to explode. Absolutely stunning moment in time. It was when a prison guard secretly let me borrow his copy of PC format, so I could read it in my cell overnight. Not all screws are vicious assholes. I never did hard time, just sat in jail until I could get bailed out. The dude in my cell knew he was going away and thought I was too. I lied and said I was in for murder charges when I was actually in for domestic violence, which was later admitted to being a lie she made up. But anyway, I told him I never been to prison before and he showed me how to make a fi-fi. Xmas Eve in Silverwater Jail. Some very big, scary-looking tatted dudes around. It's nighttime and possums start to come out of the trees. Dot and I witnessed these huge dudes hand-feeding them honey on bread, very gently. If you guys are interested, there's a prison podcast out of San Quentin called Ear Hustle that's really cool. Disclaimer guys. Everyone here is talking about prison life in America or in Western countries. Because oh boy, prisons in third world countries are a different kind of hellhole you hope you never experience. Staring down a man as I dropped a deuce. Not a convict, but I did do about 2 weeks in felony block in a county jail once. Eventually was given 2 years probation and had to go to rehab but got my felonies dropped off my record. The best thing that happened in those 2 weeks was the guap we all made. Looked like a Rice Krispie treat but almost tasted like a badass damn good taco. Lol, put it in a tortilla shell and boom, good to go. Getting hooked on The Simpsons from Season 1 Episode 1. I was in solitary for 3 months and they allowed CD player there. I had only one disc, DMX, Rough Riders. I listened to it endlessly and somehow it inspired me to write something, too. I started from rhymes and short poetry and 15 years later I own a copywriting agency and writing makes me living. Peace DMX, inspiring me for change. I spent 3 days in a halfway house when I was 23. I know it's not an extreme, but I was there. I read more books in those 3 days than I did since then and in the years before then. Shoulda put a serious tag on this. On one of my birthdays I was given a cake and lots of weed. Good times. The Christmas play at Huerfano County for the people of Walsenburg, CO. Known on the yard as Big Groovy, I was invited to participate. I played the Bumble. I had a custom-made white fluffy hoodied sweatsuit. The term buckethead from our Santa Claus kept me laughing for weeks. At the show, I actually made kids cry, scream, and run in terror. In the visiting room. Lolo. I'm black, 6 feet 3 inches, 340 pounds. So pleasant. Snacks and candy and laughs. I felt like a person instead of a convict. I think people would be surprised at how much nice things happen in prison. It is crazy the amount of altruism you see in prison. People who beg for food or items will often be given them. Even though the people know they are a beggar, they will help them. But if you are an asshole and a beggar, you will get cut off. I had family, and I could have asked them to send me money, but I don't like asking them for that, and I don't like donating to the prison system from buying their food. People would still constantly give me food and items. Things that they could sell or trade, and they would just give them to me. I just went through reception and orientation at a new prison, and had no money on my books. A guy, who I never talked to before, saw that I kept going out to the yard and work out in my prison-issue scrubs. After 2 weeks, he comes up to me and say, "Hey, are you just from reception?" I say, "Yeah, just moved here." He says, "So, I see you don't have anything other than the state clothing. I have some extras that should fit you. I'll bring it to your cell." He brought me 4 pairs of gym shorts, 3 shirts, and an $60 pair of Nike running shoes with a small tear that was stitched up. This guy, who I didn't even know, gave me about $100 worth of stuff. People get murdered for $10 in prison. This wasn't a small gift. I wanted to give him something in return, but he wouldn't accept it. The people who are in prison have done something bad to go there, but prison becomes a community, just like any neighborhood. You get to know your cellies, you get to know your neighbors. And there is this sense of, I know how shitty this place is, and I want to help you out, because I know what you feel. I think most people would be surprised at the amount of altruism that goes on in prison. People are sad when you don't get a call from your wife, or you get rejected from early parole. These people empathize with you, and want to see you go, even though they have to stay there, and will miss your company. You can see friendship and love and empathy even within the walls of a prison. I've not gone to prison, but I've spent 4.5 months in county. I've got ADHD, so the structure of jail really made me focus on working out and it was somehow peaceful. I've been clean for 4+ years, so no plans on going back. But it's still a somewhat fond memory I have. Odd lol. When I was a teenager, my dad was in prison. We would visit when we could. I remember I took a foil wrapper from an old school Hershey's bar and folded it into an origami rose. My dad took this rose and quietly called a very young guy who was visiting with his wife and gave him the rose to give to her. He explained that they got married just before he had to report for his sentence and that guys don't have anything they can give their wives as a romantic gesture. The young wife seemed so excited with that little foil, chocolate-scented rose. It was a sweet, romantic gesture on my dad's part that I had never really seen. Damn. I was just about to go to sleep, but now I gotta keep refreshing this post to see the answers. South American jail, overcrowded. First night the Obly space was in the corner, where there was a roach nest. Over the next 7 days, using my charisma, and writing letters for the illiterate prisoners, I went moving my way onto a mattress, then a thicker one, then thicker and thicker. Then one about 5 inches thick THST a fan kinda blew air towards. Then bam, the thickest one with the big fan. It's like VIP. When me and a couple of guys offered to repair the roof on one of the buildings in exchange for some ice-cold beers on a hot summer day. Watching Hitch and seeing a bunch of big, hard-looking motherfuckers smile and laugh at a rom-com. I was in CMC for 4 years, had a job feeding the inmates in the hospital infirmary. I smoke a lot of weed all my life. Even being locked up I had plenty of plugs. Long story short, I met an older gentleman who was very sick. I built a relationship with him knowing he didn't have much time left. And one day I decided to smoke him out and he told me that that was the nicest thing anyone has ever done for him in his 40 years being in the system. Sadly to say, he passed away shortly after. But I will always remember that one time we smoked out in the prison hospital and for a few hours felt that we were actually free. Rip George. Thank you for those memories, folded hands. Thanksgiving in Calipatria. I was working kitchen on the support yard and one of the free staff, not a corrections officer, but they still wear brown officer-type uniforms, brought in a cut of steak, a pack of cigarettes and a small bottle of whiskey for each member of the prison crew on that shift. We all had steak and eggs, got smashed and smoked ourselves silly before our shift ended. Pretty sure he would have gotten fired for that if caught. He was a super cool dude. Hargrave, I'll never forget his name. About 15 years ago when I was released from prison, I had nothing to my name, only my $40 gate fee. A dear friend of mine on the inside made sure I had clothes, shoes and a job to go to. Harold, if you're out there, love you bro. Leaving that bitch. I made a toilet wine version of D&D in there out of sheer boredom and was surprised to see how many people were, really, interested. I guess boredom reigns large, but still it was incredible to see a guy who in my eyes looked like a stereotypical gangster type get so much into our sessions. He'd constantly be badgering me about when we'd play next and always be super passionate. I was released quite quickly and I hope that he will retain this newfound passion. My first prison BJ. God, I still haven't gotten one as good on the outside. Dropping half a pill and listening to a Creamfield set by Judge Jules. Was due out in 2 weeks. I was only in a jail cell for an hour or so in an NYC subway police station. Yeah, apparently those exist. I got arrested right outside it too, so I literally got cuffed and walked about 20 feet. Anyway, I was in with a guy who got busted selling candy in the train. I guess he was a frequent flyer there, because he got a pizza delivered to the station and they brought it to him in the cell. It was just as I was being let out though. He did give me his business card, and I still have it around someplace. The Dementors. 2 things. The time I beat up this guy for stealing my Playboy centerfold and magazine cut out of Taylor Swift looking sexy. Not prison, but jail for this one. The few moments where I was standing at the door of the jail kitchen and caught a glimpse of my GF walking from one unit to another. She said, "Hi," and smiled. I turned bright red. It was nice. Man, do I miss her sad face. I think I agree. Having that structure and strong meaning in your life is something that I really enjoy. Tobe. When the boys caught me on tape getting it on with one of the prison football team cheerleaders. Me and the boys got a hold of some wigs and made some memories. We all dressed up as the Golden Girls and reenacted Season 2 Episode 8, Vacation. It was just so neat that the guards gave us all their wives' dresses to keep. We wouldn't let Blanche change out of it and she quickly became the belle of the balls. I can still hear Jim pleading, "I don't want to be Dorothy." But after we knifed him, the wig went on just fine. Good times. I spent a little over a decade in prison, from the early 90s to the early 2000s. In the state where I did my time, all of us had to work a semblance of a job inside the compound. Kitchen, inside grounds, maintenance, painting, cleaning, etc. Being in a program of any kind, including education, counted as having a job, and thus had waiting lists to get into. Programs also needed better educated inmates to work there as clerks and tutors, and these were the sorts of jobs that the smart inmates tended to gravitate towards, involving more hours than a menial job, but cleaner and less distasteful. Often it meant we had access to older computer hardware. No internet or anything, though. PC video games occasionally made their way onto the compound, usually brought in by one or another of the freeworlders, i.e. prison workers who were not guards, who had a soft spot for his clerks. My boss in the education classroom where I worked was like this, though he had something of a policy that the only games he would bring in would be education, strategy, or puzzle-oriented, such that if he ever got asked about it, he could say that it was a critical thinking tool that was part of his teaching curriculum. The happiest day of my prison life was the day that he brought in Myst. I had read articles about it, and wanted to play it someday, but never imagined that I'd get to play it before I got out. It was an absolutely groundbreaking game for its time, with beautifully graphics, soothing music, imaginative puzzles, and an intriguing storyline. I had never seen anything like it. The articles, reviews didn't do it justice. Over the following weeks, I would lose myself in that world for maybe an hour a day, living out an alternate life in a beautiful and magical world so far removed from the horrible reality of my current existence. I was disappointed when it was all finally over, though in a way it led to my second happiest prison memory, which was the day, a year later, when he brought in Riven, the sequel to Myst *. Smiley face. I have never laughed as hard as I have in prison. It's a very strange comedy as long as you're okay inside. On my birthday, the guards let some of my fellow inmates throw me a birthday party, make cake out of foods from commissary, blown-up gloves for balloons, homemade birthday cards, and they even spent a few days, a couple decks of cards and few tubes of toothpaste to make their own Cards Against Humanity to play. Was a pleasant memory from a shitty time. Toward end of my sentence I was eligible for work release, which meant that I could have an actual job off compound. I had an iPhone at work and got to have sex with my GF. The first few days in solitary. So quiet. The last 2 weeks, not so hot. Thanks for watching. See you later.